When you announced this news conference, I think one of the themes you said was that repealing this tax was really going to benefit the rich. Can you give us a couple numbers that would show that?
Well, they're not going to have to pay taxes on their estates. So, and their heirs are not going to have to pay taxes on the unearned income they're receiving. So, someone who makes who's got $1 million estate, their heirs are now will receive that $1 million estate tax-free. You know, we tax folks who get lottery winnings. We tax unemployment benefits. It seems to me that if you're receiving $1 million free without having to put any work into it, you should be taxed on that wealth you're receiving.
No, I understand how. I mean, so obviously, I mean, over 338,000, but I thought you had some numbers that show a lot of these are not just around 338,000. A lot of them are on states that are a lot more. Can you give us a couple of numbers that would demonstrate that?
Okay, so on $1 million to 3 million, the number of estates that the city even is talking about is 1,796. This is for the year 2009. The aggregate gross value of those estates was $3 billion, thank you, 905,951,951, and we have this written down, we can give it to you. So the tax liability was 100, I'm trying to do
There are going to be deductions.
So
yeah,
we'll give you this.
I'm looking at the deductions, but so the tax liability of the $3 billion comes down to $150 million. So
Can I add in that, of course, Ohio, like the federal law, has an unlimited spousal transfer, so there's no tax on anything you give to your spouse. And only about 8% of all the states in Ohio are wealthy enough that they're subject to the estate tax. So we're not talking about, as Representative Antonio said, about 1,700 families that have the burden of having so much money that they might have to pay a transfer tax. You know, as an attorney who's done some estate planning, I certainly understand the burden of estate planning. Everyone here, I don't care if you have nothing, you ought to do some estate planning. And particularly if you do have property, it's better for your heirs and your loved ones if you do some, regardless of whether you choose to try to avoid taxes or not. It's just better for your family.
So in 2009, the total collections were $333 million. The general revenue received, the state general revenue received $64 million. Local governments received $269 million.
Bill, is that what you're
I thought you had some numbers that showed that
data from the
a lot of these are not states that just around 300 or 400,000, but a lot of them are $1 million or $2 million. Do you have those numbers you can give us?
We'll get them to you. We'll find. Melissa will find it. We'll get them. Other questions? I'm sorry.
Orders of the repeal say that this is in effect double taxation, that they paid income tax on this money when they earned it, and they shouldn't have to pay tax again. Does your examples of how Ohio's tax refute that, or how do you respond to that?
So the estate tax is a tax on heirs. It's not an tax on the folks who earn that money. I'm receiving wealth from the death of one of my parents, or from receiving an estate. I've never been taxed on that wealth, right? In addition, some of the dollars, if you even look at it the other way, right, that this is a double taxation. Some of those dollars have never been taxed. They're in stocks and bonds or real property, and so when those dollars are transferred, we tax, the transfer of wealth all the time in this country, with the accumulation and the transfer of wealth all the time. It seems to me an appropriate place to levy a tax in order to go back and benefit society, civil society, local governments, and society in general.
I found one more try. Is that we do have some numbers from the Ohio Department of Taxation, which shows that in 2009 there were only 8,003 estates that fell into these tax brackets to begin with. which required payment of the estate tax. Most of them had the net taxable value of above $500,000. Only 2,000 estates had taxable values of between $1 million and over $3 million. So we're talking about a small number.
That has a big impact.
That has a big
Nevertheless,
impact. A small, right, very good. A small number with a big impact and ramifications for local communities.
A lot of farmers say that this estate tax really hurts them and keeps them from being able to pass their farm down to their heirs and be able to keep the farming industry, which we know is important to Ohio, alive. Talk about that.
Sure. We had testimony, at least in Ways and Means Committee, from a number of farmers and township trustees that came in. It's, one is that the exemption for family farms, you add another $500,000 to the $338,000 exemption. So it's in essence $800,000 exemption roughly. Secondly, if there's a sale of a farm, you've got up to 15 years to pay off the tax. So it's not like all of a sudden you're forced to pay off a lump sum tax on whatever the value of that farm is. You've got time to do the Division of Taxation. We ask this to them over and over. Have you ever turned down a request to have the tax paid on the estate transferred or put off for a year or 2 or 3 or 4? And they said never. We always give people time to pay that off. So as the farm is inherited to an heir, and they generate wealth on that farm, they can put away a little bit of money, that 7%. Remember, it's roughly 7% of whatever the value of that farm is. They can put away and pay off at a later date. They don't have to pay it off right away. And I guess that we did not have one, some Ways and Means, and I don't know about finance. There was not one person who could point to someone having to sell off their farm because of the estate tax. Not one. And we asked the Farm Bureau, we asked, the proponents of repealing the estate tax. They could not point to one example of someone having to sell off their farm because of the estate tax.
Representative Hagan, in the past, for many years, Republicans have charged Democrats with playing class warfare when you attack the wealthy. Now your side is using the word class warfare, charging the Republicans are playing class warfare.
Yeah, well, we Democrats have facts on our side this time. The facts are clear that the wealthy have not paid their fair share of taxes. This class warfare that we've been talking about jumps right out at you in facts, in a factual way, because even with this estate tax, I'm really actually tired of hearing all the excuses that the wealthy can't pay any more taxes. They have not paid their fair share over the last 15 to 20 years. We've watched a flat line of income for middle-class people, and then we've watched an incredible climb for those people that are making over $250,000 and $300,000 a year. They're the ones that always claim that every time we talk about an estate tax or some sort of tax that we're starting the class warfare. They're the ones that started this class warfare because they're the ones that continue to take all the money. The 400 richest people in the United States control over 50% of the wealth. Those are facts. That's the class warfare that they started. And that's happened over the last 20 years. And so when you look at areas that I represent, and those of us in Democratic strongholds, it just so happens that we happen to represent cities, more so than some of the Republicans, we are fighting to make sure that there's a fair tax system, that these individuals that are making that kind of money are paying their fair share. So the class warfare issue is one that they always scream about, and it's an excuse. They've used every single loophole developed by the Republican legislators in the U.S. Congress to benefit those individuals that are wealthy. That's a fact. So when we scream about class warfare, they scream back saying, how could you do that? You're dividing us. The facts are clear. They control most of the wealth. The top 1% control most of the wealth in the United States. That's not what democracy is all about. That's what hypocrisy is all about.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.